Today, I just want to dive deeper into providing you guys with some more depth of understanding with different aspects of the human design system. We're also going to touch a little bit on just languaging in general with these systems. And then we're going to go into the definition type. We've so far talked about strategy and authority. We've talked about the centers and given you guys an overview of that. And now we're going to look into definition. So if you have your chart, or make sure you have it ready, we're going to want you to write down or to locate based on what we're talking about to identify what kind of definition you have, right? So we're going to start with looking at the wheel. I know you guys have seen this before. This is the human design wheel. Now, all cultures, well, many cultures have tried to explain their relation to existence with the wheel, right? We see the medicine wheel and all types of different wheels in different cultures. And the human design wheel is also in that aspect. This really tells us so much about existence, and we can look at a lot of different things in regards to this, but I wanted to make sure you guys understand how it's set up, because as we move forward, like we're developing this foundation so that as we move forward, when we look at certain things, we can see all the different layers behind it, right? You don't just look at someone and go, oh, generator, right? You look at everything. These are the zodiac signs, right? I know we've kind of touched on this. And out here we have the 64 gene keys. So when we understand that we are in the center of the universe, of our universe, and then this is all about directions, right? So we have the 12 zodiac signs. That's one layer of ways that we can interpret the information, right? That is where a lot of astrology comes from. Then we have the 64 I Ching, the 64 codons of DNA that's also out there. 64 directions, angles, right, of where the planets are filtering the information. And then within that, each one of those 64, each one has 6 potentials. And it actually keeps going beyond that, but we're going to stop there. So it's 384, right? So we have the zodiac signs, right, which is different than the constellations. Don't worry about that, but that's an aspect. Then we have the gates, right? These are the numbers. So if you have like gate 1, right, that's your gate. And then we look at the planets. You want to see what planet is in that gate, because that's also going to provide a lot of information. Okay, so we're starting to see how, in order to have a holistic approach to this, you have to learn a lot of information. But these would be the planets. So the sun, the earth, north node, south node, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. This is the calculation for when you're born, when you take your first breath. That is the personality crystal. This is what we are attached to, what we believe, what we think is like our soul. And then the design crystal is 88 days before we're born. This calculation of where those planets were. And it's the combination of those two that creates our body graph, or our illusion, our experience as existence. Okay. Now, when we look at the wheel, and we'll see that there are planets when you pull it up, right? When you're born, okay, you have the sun in the 54, or you're a Capricorn, whoever this is, right? The sun would be there. The planets move this way. So the wheel is going this way, counterclockwise, right? And this is important, and we'll see later on, because when we look at transits, which I've had some people, ask me about transits and stuff, it's important to know which way they go, okay? So we understand planets, these are the gates, these are the centers, right? The shapes. And then we have channels. which connect, or the connecting forces that connect the centers. They are two genetic codons that come together and create a definition. This is where definition comes from, is from the channels, which we have not covered yet. Even the white areas that you have, these are open, but these would be like reflected channels, like a reflector, right? They're open. Now, when I talked before about genetics, right? And how, like, why is all this happening? What are the mechanisms of all these things? And especially, Kim, what you were talking about today with, like, it's hard to be in relation in, you know, there's always different dynamics with every person that we're encountering. And especially for, it doesn't matter who we are, but, you know, all of us have these like conditioned not self things. So two not self people coming together, and then it's like, it's chaos, right? So when one person starts to be themselves and starts to change that not self tendency, it becomes a very different experience of relationships. So why do we have relationships in general, right? We're meant and we're designed to connect. And I love looking at relationship charts and seeing dynamics, especially with where I'm at with this information. It is a huge tool once you know yourself, and then every single person, every single event becomes like a teacher to you through a very specific way in regards to yourself. So why do we connect? Why is this happening? The genetics, right, is it's a mechanic. Our genetics are mechanics. And a lot of times we think of genetics as like, oh, it's turning on this gene. It's making my hair brown. It's making my eyes brown. But it's also our consciousness. And that's how we're also reading it through these codes. It's not just physiological. It's literally down to everything from how we digest to what we're attracted to, our sexual preferences, right? You can even see that in a chart. How we are with like give and take. I mean, it literally is every aspect of our life. Now, we are not here to just be a puppet to that. It is that rather than being run by it, because if we just let the mechanics run by themselves with the genetics, let's say, and the mind being distorted, what happens is all the white areas in a chart, which we've kind of talked about, but we're going to get more detailed into this today. All the white areas are what we perceive as what we're missing. And that's based on our genetics. Our genetics are trying to go get that. And that is comical, right? When you look at it, when you take a step back and you start to see yourself, and then you go, holy shit, I've been spending my whole life trying to do and get these things because I thought I was missing something. Now, the genetics operating correctly without distortion will bring those people to you automatically. This is what you're attracted to. This is the chemistry between people. This is connection. This is also love-hate stuff. This is when there's no connection or no chemistry. And so we can see it in a different way. So the white stuff is genetically what we are after, what our genes are after, because it's trying to create this diversity. So rather than just being like this hungry animal that's always trying to fulfill this like thing, right? That's not us. We can actually just like let that stuff come to us and realize if it's correct or not. So when we talk about definition, which we haven't really talked about that too much yet, this is a pretty important part of human design and knowing who you are, because it has a lot of implications as to what your genetics is seeking in the not self, and then also how you can let go of that to already be whole within yourself, right? One of the hardest things in life is to, first of all, accept ourselves, to love ourselves. That's what we're here to do, and accept our loneliness as well in our process, right? We're all here together, and there's unity, and there's this and that, but no one can ever really know your experience the way that you have it, right? So there is this deep subconscious, like, okay, because we are designed to be in this existence, like to develop a differentiated consciousness, right? So this is all part of the process. And us moving into the next 7 years with the species that's coming after, that is going to be totally different for them. They're not going to have this kind of situation that we have. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, I hope now you can identify what a gate is, what it, where the channels are, and definition when we talk about it. Okay. It is the colored in areas are defined, right? The white areas are undefined. Undefined is open, the windows, and the defined is consistent. It stays the same. It's like the gears in the vehicle moving. Or as you can see here, for example, Kim has blue and an orange space. Where else do we see blue and orange, right? And what we talked about, this is how we can start to holistically see things. Because the blue is what we are aware of, who we think we are, the personality, all those things. And the orange is the unconscious, but not necessarily the mind. It's like everything that's not the mind, the body conscious, the truth. This is more like the soul. This is what we're learning about in our life. And this is what we already know about ourselves. So that is already giving us a ton of information, right? So if we even just take that, and this is why I try to tell people when you get into this stuff, people try to go to all the numbers and all this and that, like you're missing it. Look at this, just as one thing, right? Wow. Okay. So Kim would be conscious of this definition, but this part is what she's learning about. This is like her body consciousness. This is a different consciousness, right? Okay. Well, cool. We know that she is a solar plexus authority. Okay. This might be a little bit easier for her to be aware of her emotional wave. Whereas potentially other people that have this orange, it might be harder for them to see their emotional wave. They're going to have to see it through their experience with how other people are responding to them, potentially. That would probably be one way to start looking at that. And then for this, Kim's body is responding or reacting with the spleen, right? The instinct. And we can start to look at things in this way. So the way that she feels would be a generator versus the way that I feel, because all of my design is not conscious. It's all in the orange. And I always thought this was weird when I found this out about myself. I was like, wow. Because what this means is that I feel like a reflector because I don't have consciousness of my design, right? So this is very interesting. It's a whole nother layer of how to understand it. So these are things that I've been learning about in my life. And because now I know what they are, I can really put a identification to it, and I can see it and I can feel it, but it's in this other, they call it a tunnel, right? So we have roads. If you can imagine a road, you can see, you're driving down it. And then we have tunnels where you're driving, but it's dark, right? You're going through a space that you can't really see. So the next part of this, right, we're going to talk about the definitions. Okay. Definition is the colored in area, but there's different kinds of definition. So Kim is a single definition. This would be the first type, right? So if you have your channels connecting all the way through your centers, you would be a single definition. Single definitions are about 40% of the world. Single definition can already potentially feel whole within themselves. There's not a hole. There's not a space that is missing, right? This would be the distortion of the splits, which is the 60%. We'll get into that in a minute. But single definition, it's like, okay, you don't necessarily have to make relationships work like the rest of the world. You're already potentially whole within yourself in this sense. And your energy is processing within itself, right? Great. This is how you're designed. If you're a single definition, the biggest conditioning factors for you are the centers, right? So you want to go back to those center conversations that we've had, because this is a generalized conditioning for you, which we're going to see in the other types we're talking about. It is a very specific conditioning. So Kim, you know, the wisdom that you have, because the white areas are where you sample the world, right? This is where the conditioning would be more so. Now, someone like me, for example, okay, what kind of definition am I? Well, let's look. All right, I have this channel here and that connects these. Oh, wait, this doesn't connect to that. Okay, crap, this is one piece, you know? And then I have another piece here, which is perfect. Everyone's chart is perfect. But this would be known as a simple split. There's two pieces, okay? Simple splits are about 45% of the world, big chunk. Simple split, if you have just two pieces. Some people I've seen where they have a piece up here in the head and then like a piece down here. That would be a complex wide split. Because if we understand that the genetics, like I was telling you in the beginning, are seeking to bridge what we're not. So imagine somebody who has definition up here and then definition down here, nothing in the middle. That's going to be very complex because it's going to require so many different things to come in and combine it. If they're in the not self, if they are in the conditioning, they're going to feel obsessed with trying to fulfill that in their life. So their conditioning is going to be quite a bit more specific as to like what really is the not self, right? So for people like me, we'll say a simple split definition, which none of these are better or worse. And I'm going to touch on the wide definition again in a minute, but there are several potential ways my chart can be connected or bridged to bridge the two pieces. So as an example, I have my sacral, my vitality energy, my life force pumping up through my behavior, which is the channel of conviction. This is my identity and self. So I have like my energy and myself, right? This is empowerment or lack of, right? That is separate from my motivation, my drive, my ambition, my stress, and my pressure to survive, right? So this is the way that you can look at it. But I have many different ways. If someone has the 27, oh, that bridges me. If somebody has the 53, the 60, the 52, bridge. Or the 57, right? It would bridge that. And of course, there's other ways it could bridge. You know, if somebody had all this stuff over here and connected all here, there's a lot of ways. But the point is that there's a potential just one gate that can, one part, right? It's not a full channel. I'm not missing a whole channel that would bridge me. So this would be a simple split. If you in your chart have a spot where there's like one, you know, okay, there's just one place here and one there and one there. It's not a full channel. That's a simple split. If you have a bigger gap, it is a complex or a wide split. So maybe if you guys can identify what you have, that would be good, and type it up or put it in the, you know, let me know. Are you a single definition? There's no gaps? Or are you a simple split or a complex split? Those are ones we just went over. Now, what's interesting about this is simple splits, which, like I said, are about 45% of the world. It's a huge chunk. We are the ones that need to make relationships work. Like relationships for us are, you know, a big deal. Does not mean stay in a negative relationship that's toxic by any means, but there is this energy, and we are the ones that know how to make relationships work because we have been spending our lifetime with this thing that we need to bridge. Okay, so what's also interesting, if you are a simple split like me, the biggest conditioning areas of your chart are going to be the bridges more than the centers. So for me, the 52, the 60, 53, 27, 57. This would be my ideal soulmate, right? It's like if I was super conditioned, and that's probably what I was looking for a long time. And these are the things that when I have been in the not self are the things that I felt was missing or was wrong with me, and would try to do those things or be those things or look for those things in others. That's what I was attracted to, is the connection, the chemistry. And since I've been doing these systems and understanding these languages for a very long time, and pulling people's charts and seeing the type of people coming to my life, there's always opportunity for the bridge, right? The bridge is the gate that's missing. This is what makes me a specialist. And if you have a split like this, this makes you a specialist in these gates, right? These would be your specializations that you are wise about once we get past distortion. So again, right, distortion is where we have a mechanism that we're not using correctly, and it creates consequences in our lives that take us out of truth, take us out of our frequency. And then we can't impact and we can't do what we're here to do. So this would be really important to know for your chart, right? Like, what are these things? And yeah, one of the worst things that can happen, right, is if you're a simple split like me, right, where you have, it's just one gate and there might be a couple, but it's like it's not a full channel. You blame yourself for what's missing. You feel like the problem is you. And then, like I said, you're seeking out, or you're trying to be those things that are missing. But one of the worst things that could happen, maybe people that have not gotten into this information have gone into not self relationships where maybe that person has the bridge and that gate that they have, that you feel that they make you whole. You can stay in a relationship for a very long time because you're locked in to that, right? This is why strategy and authority is so important, because genetics, right? This is all genetics. And if you think about each person, so if I was with someone who had the 27, let's say they had the 27.1, and then they, again, remember there's all these very specific possibility for that one single little tiny differentiation that person has for that single mechanism. That means that for that mechanism, I get locked in to that particular way that person operates in that mechanism.
The best approach is you start with living the strategy and authority, and then you start investigating one little thing. But this stuff is going to make sense. Like, you want to hear it so that when you have the question, you can connect it back, and then it'll make sense to hear it again. Yeah. So it's a part of practicing. We're practicing our design. We're practicing being who we truly are. And so it's let the questions evolve and come up as you're doing it. Don't try to get the whole bird's eye view all at one time.
Yes. Exactly. And again, with all this information and what we understand about it, it's a transmission. So a lot of times we have to remember too that we don't need to get all the information. This is like literally like being downloaded, right? And so as we keep going, we're putting the building blocks in. And like I've said before, it's like you're swimming in an ocean and you're like in the middle of the ocean, like, I don't know where I'm going. And then all of a sudden your feet are going to touch the ground. And you're like, okay, I'm in the whole ocean. And I've got this. But this is not for everyone to know as well. Like, if this is just something that doesn't make sense, especially if you have the 43 or 23, right? Let it go.
Let it go over your head, like literally.
Yeah. I am a detail-oriented, logical, analytical mechanic that synthesizes systems. And that's the way that I bring this stuff together. I'll try to make it more simple. But what I'm trying to say is that these would be the most conditioned areas of a chart. So first off, look at your Good, Sandy.
There you go.
I did it. So look at your chart. Are there pieces that are separate? Just identify that. Don't worry about everything else. You know, do the channels, just see the flows of energy. Is it going from one center to the next? Where are the colored in areas? Is it flowing, right? Okay, this one's flowing from there to there. This mechanic is stable and that's where it is. And then look there, how do I connect to these? How does this piece connect to these? Well, it doesn't for me. It's nothing wrong. This is perfect for me, right? Everyone's chart is perfect. So just identify that. This is that first step, right? Or are you like him where it's all connected through? Okay. So if anybody has any questions on how to identify that, let me know. I think that should be, we're just looking from the colored in centers to see what is connected. Okay. Yeah. And that's, you know, with all this kind of information, because this is probably very new to a lot of people. And I really enjoy teaching it. So if you just kind of stay with it and we'll get there, just kind of be patient. Yeah, we'll get there, but there's a lot of foundational information. Like we could cover foundational stuff for a year or more to understand it. So there's no rush. It's just, okay, here's what's coming in. Here's something new that maybe you didn't even know how this worked, right? Channels connect the centers. The centers contain the gates, the numbers. If you're a split definition like me, where I have a piece over here and a piece over here, and there's like things that I need to connect it, other people's auras, animals, insects, plants, the astrology, those are all codes that can connect it. All the time it's being connected, meaning I'm able to take a different code because every single person, animal, insect, plant has a very specific different essence of that code, a different layer, a different chemistry. So I get to experience that bridge a little bit different every time. That's why it's specialization. If you're a split, identify the numbers that would bridge you. This is going to be the biggest thing in your life that is causing conditioning. It's the obsession of the mind that takes us away from who we are, takes us out of our truth. It's the number one thing that prevents us from being in our truth frequency. It's important, right? But it is our wisdom. It is a huge wisdom. This is where we're heading with this information. We're going to start to look at these more foundational pieces and it's going to come together, you guys. So right now, all we're talking about is identifying where your colored in areas are. You know, we've already done the class on the centers. So you should know, or at least have that printout of this is the head, the ajna, the throat, the G, right? So you kind of have an idea of the names of them and a little bit about what they do. Now you're looking at your own chart and you're seeing what is colored in. So if I'm looking at Kim's chart, okay, she has the spleen connected to the G center. Look at that flow of energy. It's connected. That's a channel. Oh, what else? She has the G connected down through this channel to the sacral. Okay, and then connected over here. Whereas my chart, okay, this is connected to here, but then it's not connected to the other piece. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Here's another person. Let's see what they are, right? Oh, look, connected, connected, connected. Single definition. How about this? All right, connected, connected. Uh-oh, split. There's one split. Okay, there's a simple split. This is connected, but there's a simple split. These would be the two gates of most conditioning because that's how it could connect. All right, you guys, definition. We have no definition, like Sandy, reflector, white, completely open, no channels, no colored in centers, no definition. We have single definition, like Kim, right? One piece, it's all connected. Then we have split definition, like me. There's one piece here and one piece there. It's a split, simple split. Then we have triple split definition. So if we're looking at Monique's chart, we're going to see, all right, she has a piece here, the head and the ajna connected. Okay, it's split here though. So it's 3 pieces, right? Triple split definition. Triple splits are, I believe they're about 11% of the population. And they have the 3 pieces within them. Okay, so they're different than like me, where it's just a simple split or a single split. Meaning that there is some more complexity, but in a way they just overall operate differently. They are designed to be around lots of different auras that are always coming in and coming in contact with them. If you're a triple split, you want to also use what we call neutral conditioning, meaning, let's say that you want to make a decision in your life, or you're going through some stuff or whatever it is. Go to a place where there are lots of people around and just be around them. You don't even have to talk to anybody. Just, go sit in the mall food court and let all the people walk around you. Go to a coffee shop. Go wherever it is where there's lots of different auras. Now, think of this too, because triple splits are here to be liberated. Need that liberation, that freedom, that space to move, because you don't want to be locked into a single aura. You don't want to be locked into someone else's configuration. That you need relationships that are going to honor that and give you lots of freedom and time and space, and time with other people besides that relationship, and then space to yourself. The conditioning does work differently for a triple split. It's going to be all those bridges again, right? So if we go back to Monique's chart. Okay, the 23 and the 5 and the 14, but also the 20. Right? So these would be the numbers that Monique should write down. And look at that, right? And we can talk about those things specifically, but those would be the areas of like, okay, these are the things that could make you feel more whole sometimes, or more, all of a sudden everything comes together and you have clarity. Then we have quadruple split definition, which are like really rare. All right, so here's an example. Right? I have a couple in my client base, but as an example, right? You got one piece here. Okay, boom. All right, this piece, but it's not connected to this piece, and it's not connected. So there's 4 separate pieces. Wow. And quadruple split definitions are very odd, right? They're like less than 0.5%, and they're just very odd creatures. Like, I've known a couple in my life, like they're brilliant and everything. It's great, it's perfect, but they're very different and odd. And what can happen is people around them can think that they're the problem, right? Like if you're around a quadruple split, you're going to feel like something's wrong with you potentially, and it's not like anyone's fault or anything like that, but it's just the way their definition is operating.
What makes it different? Like how would you identify? Like if you were like, oh, they kind of behave like a quadruple split, like what would you detect?
Well,
are they like really confident within themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that could be, but it's also kind of like, if we understand how the mechanics works, and we understand that, like what I was saying, how certain definitions will like almost blame themselves and see others as being help to them, right? Like a simple split. Or others, like if there's a wide split, they're going to think everyone else is the problem and they won't listen to your advice potentially. It's like what you were saying earlier. And I was thinking of, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you understand this mechanic. And then with like a quadruple split, they're operating so much complexity within themselves, right? That they're not necessarily like, they're not maybe going to take the advice potentially or take that kind of thing, because they're into their own process. They've dealt with a lot of complexity. They've had a lot of weird things come into their life.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I've only known like 2 in real life. Like I've done sessions for some, but I only know 2 like that are my friends. Oh yeah, here it says right here, split definition. It would say triple split or quadruple split or things like that. So Andy, if we're looking at this, you see the flow of energy here is connected to that flow of energy, right? One piece. Then we have this connected to that. 2 pieces. So for you, it would be the 16. This is going to be the biggest point of conditioning for you. And that would be what we talked about in our sessions, the like feeling the need to acquire a bunch of skills and always like getting a lot of skills and really focusing on your skills, and then feeling inadequate, but that's not true. Like you have the depth, you have everything that you need, trying to get a lot of skills, taking new courses, you know.
And I think this is the way to learn it. Exactly what you just said. Like, this is what, like, you're trying to come up with it yourself, even though the chart says it, you're just to have that understanding. And then it's like, once the understanding is imprinted, it's just the new perception. Like you just kind of naturally see it the way Danielle is, but we want you to focus on you, just yourself.
Yeah.
This is the danger of trying to like do it for your clients and your husbands and your partners and then it gets confusing. We're discussing like one thing at a time so that you can hear it, you can get it, you can like imprint it, kind of download it, play with it, and then we move on. But our intellect, our mind, our busyness wants to, then it's that. And that's where the craziness starts. So it's like, whenever you notice yourself doing that, just kind of come back to, what about me?
Yeah.
What about me? And keep coming here. I promise you, once you learn it for yourself, it'll make way more sense on even what you're attracting in relationships. Look at what is the number that will bridge you so that you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're single, you're not looking, what are you looking for?
If you're a single definition, you really, really want to study that centers class that we did, and identify the centers that you have undefined.
Because the centers matter, but when you're
more.
split and whatever, then that matters more. Is that what
Yeah, if you're a single definition, then the centers are going to be your conditioning. If you're a split, it's the bridges, the gates that are missing. And then it goes more complex than that, but this is, I think, where we'll probably go for today. If you have the Gene Keys book, right, which I believe that Kim and I we're going to start doing the Gene Keys stuff later, but this is an old one. It's blue now. But if you have the Gene Keys book and you know your numbers, go ahead and write them down and look at them and read them and just see like, okay, these are like some 10. There you go. I need to get a new one. This one is like falling apart.
I posted the link in the group though. You guys got it.
Yeah, I would look at them and just contemplate them and see how like that energy, that essence is something that you're trying to fill a gap in your life. Because the whole thing is, when you're a split definition, when you're awake, okay, when you are in yourself, you're embodied, and you are aware of this, and you recognize that you're no longer trying to seek that, because now that we've identified it, now we stop doing that. And now when that stuff comes in, we feel it, and it's a joke. It's a joke, because what we realize is when that comes in from someone else is we actually don't even want it. It's like, nope, bye. As an example, I have the 27 as a bridge, potential bridge. It's the gate of caring and nurturing, right? And it would connect to my sun, a very important code, my most important code, part of my cross, part of my main energies. And so I recognized how in my life that a lot of things for me are about like, can I be really nurturing and caring? And like, and I've been in relationships where like, that actually got really annoying because I like ended up having to like mother and like stuff like that. And I love nurturing and caring, but that was something that I felt I needed to do in order to be a better person.
Because someone told you that, right? Or that's what you understood, or that's what your environment did, that's what your mom did, or whatever.
Yeah, it's the genetics. And so rather than doing that, I recognize, okay, I'm here to be like empowered and to help people come into their purpose, right? By me coming to my purpose. And, you know, the 50 is the other side of my 27. So it's like, I'm actually here to like, not take on other people's responsibilities, right? Because that's the like distortion, which is how it would show up for me, nurturing and caring. Is like, I would take on stuff that like isn't my responsibility, which would hinder my own self-care, right? So we can see how it like all is interconnected.
Can I just ask this? So the missing gate that will connect the centers is the place of the highest conditioning. Can you explain that one more time? So what she just said, I think answers the question with Andy with so the joke, the cosmic joke is actually, I don't need to go get a whole bunch of more of those, whatever courses or whatever things. So the temptation is it will always come. You're going to keep hearing it. You're going to keep wanting it. You're going to keep needing that investigator going for you. You're like, oh, I see you. I hear you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Then you go back to strategy and authority. And like for you, Andy, like because yours is the 16, it's only one gate. It's only one place in the chart. So this is something where you probably blame yourself, or you feel like this is the problem that you have. This is the issue. And it could be a subconscious, like these things get so repressed that sometimes even when we talk about them, we might not resonate with it right away because it's like, it's so deep in there that it's just our way of being now. And so we want to bring that up to awareness. So for you, if it's that 16, Andy, you know, it's really about recognizing your depth already because you have the 48, the other side of this. It's about recognizing that you don't need to go out and get all these certifications and all, you know, I'm not saying you are, but that could maybe be a tendency of the past. And that every relationship that you're in, every dynamic, everything, are you subconsciously or consciously feeling inadequate about your skills, right? Or feeling like that, what do they call that? The imposter syndrome, or, you know, like I'm not good enough. I don't have enough skills quite yet. I'm not a master. It's a channel mastery, right? That is all bullshit. This is just conditioning. So for you, it would be about accepting that, bringing that into awareness, popping that conditioning. And then guess what? That distortion is no longer part of your life. And so what happens is you attract people, you already are, you're attracting people that have the certain skills that maybe you don't have for this certain thing. And then they can bring those skills to, you know, whatever it is.
Connection. It's about connection and relationship and the right people and the right timing and with ease, and flow.
I was contemplating this week too. And I had this like little realization, and it was like, okay, you know, when people speak or when we hear something that resonates or is inspiring, or, you know, we like what this person is doing and we want that, right? And this happens all the time, right? We hear like gurus speaking or different teachers, Tony Robbins, whoever it is, right? These people that, you know, some people just really like to go out and I think it is inspiring, but what all those people have in common is that it's their truth frequency. It's not about like what they're acquiring and trying to repackage, because that is the origin of distortion. Is like we try to take something that we heard or somebody else is doing, and then we try to like repackage it, and then now it's distortion.
Because we think it works, because we see it successful for them.
And that's exactly what conditioning is. That's homogenization. Whereas like your key.
We try to do it. We try to be it. You hear that about reinventing the wheel. Yeah. Right. And go and do it with some, but they already have the exact way, the exact thing. Go and do what they do. Go in. And then we see this, everyone trying to clone their mentors.
Yeah. Yep.
And it doesn't work for me. I don't understand it. It doesn't work for me. And it's really about going inside and letting your brilliance bubble up and to go be the expression of that. Then you will be the influencer of that, not the influencer of that guru or that mentor or that other person in their system.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's, you know, something that, especially like with my own channels and my cross and everything that I'm here to do. And like, that's why I love doing sessions, because it like, that's what I'm trying to get people into that space. Is like, here is you, you know, and here's how you can activate your voice, and it's all in your codes. And so this would be that first thing to eliminate with the conditioning, right? So you're identifying am I more conditioned by the centers, or am I really more conditioned by these splits that I have? And if so, all right, I need to look at that and take a break from those things, because it's all of this peeling away of what we're not. That's what all these systems are. It's really not about doing a bunch of things to change yourself. It's like, this is all about awareness of bringing up those things that prevent us from our truth.
Yeah. And it may feel a little confusing and complicated at first because you are trying to figure out what is conditioning, what is not, what is really me, what is not. And just allow it. Like, don't argue with it. It's like, yeah, this is like a mind fuck right now.
Yep.
Emily says, so that missing bridge is something that you can do on your own. Yes, that's the information we're giving. Everything is about personal empowerment and taking you inside. Everything that we're teaching, everything. Like this is, hey, let's go out and get some awareness. So here, let's just look at these numbers and see what that awareness can bring. And then Sandy just said, I like the knowing. So it's okay to know, like we want to know. It's when the knowing is the thing that we need. Like we feel like we have to attain all of the knowing. We feel like we need to know everything. That's where it's the problem. The knowing it, that like everything we're talking about today, you know it. Did you receive it yet? We'll see. But you know it because you've just been given it. But if your mind is busy thinking, I'm confused and I'm not sure and I don't know and I don't understand and I wish you would, if it's doing that, then it's not focusing on the information.
Yeah.
And that's what distorts the knowing.
All this stuff's going to build. Okay. And so there's going to be things that all of this information is a complete shift in perspective, right? In life and how we deal with things and we understand. And that's like the beauty of it. I love it because it clarifies existence and like what is happening, but it is definitely a different perspective for sure.
I'm going to cut you here. I don't mean to cut you off. I want you to keep saying what you're saying, but I just want, like, I feel like we could both just say, just sit back and trust.
Yeah.
Just sit back and trust.
Yes.
And if you can settle into that and then let her finish talking and then receive what she's saying, just like, I trust in perfect timing. I'm going to get it when I get it.
Yeah. Yep. And I, especially when I do sessions and stuff too, I have a lot of stuff in my chart about mastery and like, just, that's why like I geek out on this information. And like my particular fractal line is like people that encounter me, which I've been given libraries of information from people. Like when I'm in the jungle and they're like, here's boom, a terabyte of stuff, you know, and I'm just like, holy crap. It's just all part of my fractal. And the way that I operate though, is people can only have access to the information. They can actually access everything if they're in the alignment, meaning if they basically do what I say, like do this first, just focus on this, right? And then do this. Okay, now you're done. Here's this part, right? Because that's like part of my key with it is to, I've been organizing it for years, studying it, and I know how to present it and to educate people with it so that they don't get lost in the ocean of everything. So if you just focus on the stuff that we're doing, go back, look at the centers, right? Take that really in and look at what that means for your life. And don't move forward until you've done that.
Right. Even if you want to like go all the way back to just what was my strategy and authority, like that, you're just kind of popping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're going to hear this stuff 17,000 times.
Oh, at least.
And it's going to have a new meaning every time.
Every time. Yeah.
Every time. Emotional authority. Is it wrong to make a decision right away when I am overexcited about something? Question mark.
Yes.
Do I have to wait for the low to come through first? Question mark.
Exactly. Yes, this would be the prime example of a conditioned response would be to, because you're excited, because excitement is nervousness, which is nervous system. Excitement and nervousness, right? Excitement is the high. And again, the emotional system in the high and in the low, there's no awareness. It's the worst time to make a decision in either one of these. So you have to see the high and then the low to be able to look back and say, okay, that was the high and that was the low. Can I deal with the low? What did the low show me? I'm a wisdom keeper with the solar plexus. That's who you are. That is why you have the low end, to protect yourself and to sweeten the deal also. Like other people will be attracted to it, to make sure that depending on your configuration with the chemistry of the wave, look at the gates, right? And the channels. How is it defined, right? That's going to make a big difference. So yeah, you absolutely have to wait. And this is the hardest thing. This is the number one lesson for solar plexus.
So hard.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's uncomfortable. It's almost like you feel lost, like the gauge that you were using, like you can no longer use anymore, right? Which is that excitement or that low or that high or that, you know, because we kind of, I would ask the question, like, why am I feeling urgent? Why do I have the urgency? And
if you
be
feel
with
pressure
that.
and your emotional authority, you better wait more. Something else I learned, I'm open emotional. So I am here to learn about the emotional system because I experience lots of different people within half of the world. Is that, and I just learned this like this week, it just came into me and I was like, okay, emotional authority. So you have the high and then you have the low. And let's say you still haven't decided yet and you go back up to the high and then you go back up to or back down to the low. And let's say somebody asks you a question about, and they're pressuring you to make a decision that's low end, right? You're back at the low end. This is why it's so important to have the wisdom, because you're going to feel uncertain still. You're going to feel like, I'm not sure. And this is why you want to look back and go, okay, well, all of this was shown to me, and still don't make a decision in that low end. You want it to kind of come back up a little bit. The way that you tell you're ready to make a decision is ask yourself, how nervous am I? Nerves.
And the urgency, how urgent does it feel that I need to answer this right now?
Mm-hmm.
That urgency, that tension, stress, urgency, that pressure for the emotional. And the world is used to like demanding that. We have been playing that game and we demand it on ourselves. We do it to ourselves. You better get out of this. You better snap out.
Like identify as being indecisive and like own that. It's wise.
And then trust, play the ebb and flow, document it, write about it, play with it. Worst case scenario, better case scenario, you know, kind of identify all of that while you're sitting in it, exploring it. Just explore. Okay, you got your answer. You answered your own question, actually, and then you got your answer. So the lunar strategy, tips on moon journaling, starting with this new moon is the question.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So if you go to jovianarchive.com and you go to the Just Now chart, I would track that. I would have a calendar. All right, go here, Jovian Archive, go to Just Now chart. Okay, so if it were me, I would have a little journal. We know that this is the moon. And and this actually can go for everyone. Like tracking the moon is one of the best ways to learn, really. And they say that when you get more deeper into this, that's something that you can do. But I would have my calendar out every day, especially if you're a reflector. Okay, at noon, let's say you check it at noon and you check it at 9 o'clock at night, or pick 2 times, twice a day. Maybe 12 hours apart. It's probably better. Because the moon will shift another gate later. And you want to write day 1, 57. And then look at your design. The 57, does it link up to the 10? Like, do you have the 10? Or do you have the 34? Or do you have the 20? 57 is one of those complex ones, but most of them are just one gate, okay? So I would look at that and be like, okay, do I have the other end of the channel? 57 is active today. And let's say, for example, the next day would be the 61. You look up there and see if you have the 24 or what it's activating. What you want to start with is writing down that pattern. And then you do that for 29 and a half days, or just do it from new moon to new moon. It's fine. And that is your pattern is going to repeat every month.
Starting with this new moon. So start there.
If you have the gene keys, this would be an easy way. All right, 57. Let me just get familiar with the 57. All right, we know it's intuition, and we know that, it's the origin of splenic fear, which is survival. Okay, what am I experiencing today? The moon, by the way, and why this works, when we look at collective programming, the program, like today, the moon is the focus for everyone. The world is focusing on the 57.1 today. That's also why we look at the moon. And so we know that the energy around that, 57 is where we are collectively right now, the focus.
Yep. So it gives you, especially when you're wide open and you're feeling like, what the hell? And we always go to us. We think it's us. We think it's us. It's just right. It's just awareness. All of these are just tools to bring more awareness so that we can stop badgering and beating ourselves up and stressing ourselves out. And it's like, oh, awareness. I notice. Okay. The next one is, so Sandy is saying, it's not correct for me to say the I think or I believe. So I will say with certainty, and this needs verification. So it's not so much about the stage of the moon, but more about what gates the moon passes through in the 29th day cycle. I would like to know more about this too. Like, how do I look at the chart and know it's a generator kind of day or a projector kind of day? That's a great question.
The thing is, most of the channels, so this is what you'd have to do. You'd have to figure out what the channels mean, not as in like, oh, this is the channel of conviction or the channel of struggle or whatever. It's, is it projected? This is what you'd want to know first. So here, you could have like a picture like this, okay? And we're seeing that most of the channels are actually projected. All right, so most of the channels are projected, which this is a whole other layer for everybody too, because I'm a generator, but I have a projected channel also, right? So there's like a projected energy within me that follows the projector rules. Doesn't change my authority or my type, but it's an aspect of how I operate. So you would want to look at this and say, okay, if the 57 and you have the 20 as an example, oh, that's a projected energy. Write that down, write the channel that is completed. But yeah, it's going to be highly specific and going to need some more details for that.
Okay. So maybe that's something you can just like kind of start getting curious about. The next question is, I think I have a decent grasp of my emotional center, but I'd like more clarification on my open head. I get now that because of that, I'm easily influenced by my surroundings, who I'm with, what other people say. Still questioning, where is me in those situations? How do I sort that out? Take it back to ask the question and listen from the sacral response. So I have an open head. I'm influenced. How do I depend on my strategy and authority when I'm influenced?
So, and the whole thing is the influence is not something we're going to try to get rid of, right? For one, that is a whole thing that sometimes we think that we can do.
She wants to know how to take it back. How do I take it back to myself and turn it in a way that I will get a decent response or like a trusted response from myself?
Yeah. And this is what's interesting about Mallory, right? So Mallory, you're talking about your head center here. Yours is completely open. There's no activations, right? Beautiful. It is a pure receiver, but it can be a source of extreme confused distortion. So this is why I put that information when we did our session about the head center and about you making lists for the day, about what you need to do because there's distractions, and the completely open head center in a distorted state doesn't know what to be inspired by. So it's inspired by everything, like literally things that like don't deserve attention or like, so that can be the distortion. So you want to have the list. You, again, always ask yourself, am I responding to life or am I taking what's going on inside of me and trying to do that with decisions? And, obviously re-listening to all the calls and things like that, but the influence part of it, right? So if you have a completely open head center like you, Mallory, it's beautiful because when you're around, what you're doing, you may or may not know this, but you have this open head. It's completely open. So whatever the other person has, like for example, I have the 63, but I have an open head center too, but I have a 63. So when I'm talking with you, that 63 is being amplified by your completely open head center. You are allowing the person freedom with their inspiration, and it feels really good. But there's that fine line for you with like, okay, wow, that I allowed them freedom with their inspiration. They were so inspiring.
Right. That feels good. That feels perfect. That's me. I got it. I got to go do something with it. I'm the same. Something she and I's done a lot of work around is like that. And for all of you with the open head, just notice if this is something that you do. Like it's really hard to like, it's like everything's slippery. You can't really grab there. It's because there's all so much, and it's exciting and it's fun and it's influential, How can we become our own influencer though? How can we go to our strategy and authority and be influenced by ourselves? So take that information, be inspired by it, be excited by it, be influenced by the motivation, by the inspiration to go inside. Here's a 6-2 projector. All of my centers are open except for 2. The splenic and the root centers are defined. I have splenic authority. Not sure how to navigate with all those open centers.
Yep. So Ra Uru, he talked about how if he ever had a choice, even though, again, we're here to love our own design, which I would never change anything about my own design. After knowing it, I'm like, this is perfect. Like, I want everything in it. But what he said would be his favorite design, potentially, if he could choose, would be completely open. No activations, nothing, just completely open, right? So it's a gift. But yeah, when you are, especially you said splenic projector, if you just have the root and spleen, technically an energy splenic projector. But yeah, you do need to be careful of influence. Ra was splenic. And one of the things that he said is as you get more and more in your alignment and you get more and more into what's happening, your energy literally will take over. And so for him being splenic, he would not allow, like, because of all that openness, he would not allow people to come into his aura. Like some people, it would just be like, you're not allowed. And he felt very uncomfortable doing this. But the spleen is your lymphatic system screaming at you saying, hey, this person's going to get you sick. This is unhealthy, or they're going to be a danger to you. It's communicating things that are not going to make sense, which is why it's so hard for splenic people to listen to their spleen, because it doesn't make sense mentally. It's like, am I paranoid? Like people are going to think I'm weird or whatever. So review the centers. If you can get aware of what it feels like, right? And the only way to do that is to have awareness of how you operate. And everyone, okay, this is something that can help everyone here, especially those I've done sessions with. Go out into the world and embody who you are. Like literally, like I was talking to Sandy about this, right? About being the reflector and everything we talked about. I was like, have you ever just embodied being a reflector and what that means and what that feels like? Same as projector. You carry the keys of success, and you have your channels and you have your energy, and you're open and you're receptive and you're here to guide. What does that feel like to you, right? Like going into the world and like actually embodying and embracing that, practicing what that feels like, what that is to you.
I want to say this to everyone and just ask the question, like, are you grateful and appreciative for your exact design? Because we tend to go in and compare and look and it's like kind of take us out of that, but really coming to the acceptance of this is perfect. This is the puzzle piece I get to play. Mm-hmm.
Well, when I first heard about mine, I was upset that I was not a manifester. I was like, I'm not a manifester. It's like, this is bullshit. And then I was like,
everyone wants to be the manifester, right?
Hold on. So it's normal. It's totally normal. And especially until we really understand this stuff. And like, that's what we're here to do, is to help everyone come up to this level. So we're all sitting at the round table, and, we're going to have to go through some distortions and clearing out things. And I remember also when I first started, you know, I was a couple years in, and there was somebody who I worked with that had studied under Ra for 19 years. And I remember he was like, he told me that I was in my conditioning and that I was trying to prove myself to the world. And I got so offended, right? I was like, "Ah, that's so rude," you know? And like looking back, I'm like, shit, I really was, you know, I was like having my nonprofit and I was doing all this work, and great, that's good experience. But there are things that we cannot see until later. And then we're like, oh, well, yeah, this is what's happening. So we'll all work on it together.
I think that's just the trusting, like really trusting. So I have a couple more questions. I want to hurry, but get in here. I promised if they would put them, we would answer them. I want to know more about the channels and if they are filled in or not, personality/design. Some are striped. So could you just clarify what this means? Like when it's got two colors,
Yep.
or when there's no color at all, or when there is, just generically.
Yep. So when it's got the two colors, either it's like the hashtag kind of like stripes, or like in my program, it is, you know, like this is two colors, right? So as an example, this one's all blue. It's like we were saying, it's conscious. It's part of the awareness. This channel has part of it half colored in both colors. So the 11, right? That's part of it. Oh, 11 here and 11 there. It's on the blue and the orange. And then the 56 is in the orange. Right there. So it's not fully a conscious channel. There's like part of it that is a tunnel, part of this mechanism that is learned about through awareness. So yeah.
Okay. I have two more. So I want to ask this one first in case we run out of time, because it was asked, we kind of talked about it, touched on it earlier. So another 6-2, I'd like to know more about how to use my sacral authority, my knowing in the moment, and also how to use my powerful voice. I remember and I can, as opposed to I think and I feel. So that's the question. How can I use my voice?
You're asking how to tap into your sacral and then how to use your voice. Okay, so for those of you that I've done sessions with, you know, we may have talked about the voice, which is the center point of the chart. This is definitely a more advanced aspect, which takes time. It took me many months to even like remotely get kind of into it. We know that the throat is the mechanism for everything to come out. So Susie, you as a sacral generator, right? It's just about responding and letting your life come to you, doing what feels good for your energy. But then with the voices, you know, and sometimes if details or things like this don't resonate or make sense right away, and especially when I'll use my own self as an example. When I tried using my voices, I have I think and I believe and I lead, which I was like, what is this? You know, what's the lead? These are things that when we are really in our truth frequency and when we are making decisions, when we are impacting people, or communicating something, depending on those essences, we are able to use those voices, and we should use those voices. It is also another way to eliminate distortion, because one of the greatest ways we distort things, again, is taking something that somebody else said, then we try to put it in their voice, in their structure, and then we lose our voice, and then we don't have impact, and then we are not ourselves. It's like all related. Then just like Kim was saying, you know, how when we believe or when we what we think and all this creates our reality, there is some truth to that for sure, and especially with the frequency or the structure of your expression. But this is something that will take maybe years to fully develop. I mean, it took me months to even just start to, I would be communicating and I would say, I know, and that's not my voice. And so what I do a lot of times is I will try to change the voice like mid-sentence. Like, oh, instead of I know, well, I believe actually, and I think da 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 da. But these are things sometimes For some people, the actual voices, it's a little bit different for them to approach. So take it or leave it. And
whatever comes across on the path while you're trying that, while you're learning it, whether it's years or months, is possibly the thing that the learning it was exposing. And so in other words, just let it be okay to fuck up and not get it right.
Yeah.
Totally. And trust that it's all exactly the way
right.
You're supposed to learn it, that you actually know better than we do or anyone else does on the time frame. Yeah. It's just requiring a lot of just trust. I trust life. I trust this information coming through. I trust that when I question it, that I'm going to trust my own answer. I trust that I'll know what's right for me in the time. And whatever that was at that time, no matter how it resulted, was also perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, this information is not for everyone. There's only Ra talks about fractal lines, but if you're here and you're being introduced to it, you're on at least my fractal line of like getting the information. May or may not be correct. Ra even talks about how there's 66 ways to the truth. Human design is one of the ways. So there are many different systems and things that may make more sense to others. But yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff, I've been doing it for a very long time. And even still, and this is the beauty of it, is I'm always like having realizations about simple things. And I'm like, oh, and it's because I have a structure and a languaging now. And when I experience life, things just process and it goes, oh, and then this is what I teach, right? And this is how I'm able to use my vehicle, my conduit, to share and to process in as clear a way as I can what life is showing me, right?
Where every time we hear the information, we're hearing it as a new person, as a new perspective, as a new being. So it's like, that's why it's like living. And it's like, you're like something so simple, but it's simple to the person that you are now, not to the person who heard it 5 years ago.
Right.
It's so that's what, like, if you just let it come in, be intrigued, play, kind of like sample, taste, look around, explore.
Time.
So the numbers don't determine everything. It's the whole chart that matters. That's the question.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why, and I'm guilty of this too. When I first started, I just wanted to know everything. And I kind of probably put myself back a little bit because I was like, oh, look at all these numbers. But yeah, this is why the foundational stuff is so important. Like, all right, look at the centers. And before I would ever even get into gates, I would talk about hexagram structure. This is going to sound gibberish. Circuitry, all these other things that like are not even about the gates. So that actually, even if you didn't know much about the gate, you could interpret it based on all this other, all this background, all this underneath information mechanism. And that's a lot of how I learned all this stuff, because I know all the mechanisms, and I don't even need to know all the numbers in Ra's explanation of it. I'm like, well, I've seen this. I know what this looks like. This is all the mechanics.
All right. One more. Since I'm focused on food, weight loss, etc., I would like to know more about using my sacral authority generator to eat well for my body. So we use this sense from the sacral to decide if I want to eat something. Because we talked about this, the very first thing, like try something simple. This is Emily. Try something simple with use food. Let's just kind of play with that. You remember?
Yeah, let's talk about food. Food is the number one conditioner out of all things. I was talking to, people this week too about how, we're out with somebody and they're like, oh, come here, try this. It's so good. Right. And it may not even like our body's like, but we don't want to be rude. Or everyone at the dinner table eats the same thing, even though, especially with food, it is equivalent to how we process life. How we process food is also how we process existence. Meaning every person has a different digestive system. We can see this. There's actually a whole layer within the system where we would need to see like your conditions or circumstances and how you would need to eat food, not what you need to eat. So weight loss and like weight, there are ways to see in a chart, like, do you have the 55? Do you have the 39? How's your 40 looking? Like, do you eat fast? Do you rest after you eat? There's a lot of things. And then also underneath all that, how are you eating compared to what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to be eating, meaning the conditions. For example, my digestion, I have to have frequency, sound, music, and taste. So for a long time, I thought I could get really healthy by chugging these green drinks that tasted like crap. And that actually was really bad for me. And then I realized that my love for salt was correct for me. But what I was missing, which was causing inflammation, because part of my digestion was I need to have lots of liquid and then I need to sweat, right? So I've integrated those things and my health is getting better. And it's not necessarily about what I eat, even though for me, my interpretation of things in my chart is processed foods is really bad for me. But Raw even talks about it. He's like, you could eat roadkill. And if you're eating in the correct alignment with your PHS, your primary health system, your digestive system, which is in the charts, then you will be able to extract the nutrients. And that's the same with life. If you are correct in your alignment, no matter what life throws at you, you can deal with it. Ra even talks about like smoking and things like that. Like if it's correct in your alignment, it won't kill you. But if you quit because of conditioning, then you're going to die. Like it's like
you see this, people who quit drinking and smoking because they're supposed to, then they go into a depression, have a heart attack and die. Like what? They were happy and fine. Like, I've been trying to do this and I've noticed that I don't really want to eat something once I prepared it. It's hard to imagine just following myself versus a protocol when I've obviously fucked it for years and years. My husband has very strong beliefs about what I should be eating, even while he eats pizza and drinks beer. We're together all day, every day, again, while he's in between jobs. So like, that's what and it's very much like what you're saying, but it's a lot of conditioning. It's like the conditioning from the diet industry, from the coaching that she's had before, from what she believes, through her own experience. She said, here's her belief. My husband's influence is hard. And so that could be your growing right now, is that coming into trusting yourself.
Yep. And that's why we say food is number one conditioner. And when we talk about like, if we really want to do this stuff, and I don't want to sound like pessimistic because it's amazing, it's beautiful, but I want to be real, right? This is not an easy thing, right? We're going to be uncomfortable with even what we're doing, right? Sleeping alone, maybe eating alone, right? Eating differently than other people, saying no when it's like everyone wants you to say yes, right? So it's like, especially with food, like they say, when you really get into your strategy and authority and you're practicing with food as well, that your body is the first thing to respond to this information. It will start to really, you'll feel it in your body because it's a physical change, a chemical change in your body with all this information. So I understand. And I believe that if you had some more details, Emily, for what I was just talking about, there's ways we can see what's going on. So then you can pop that conditioning and have the conviction in yourself, the empowerment,
the authority, to own the authority of what you know. Yeah,
exactly.
A little bit more. So I need to figure this out for myself. That's so. It feels like where you are right now is you're like observing, and you're already recognizing you're not in authority. Yes, I want my own authority. She just said it. Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying about because let's look at it. What Danielle just said about like, let's be practical. Are you going to have to learn 4 years of information before you make the changes? There's no way. We have to start with what we know right now, in this moment right now, use the resources, gain access, question, and then really, this is the homework I want to leave you with, and then I'm going to let Danielle leave you with whatever she wants to kind of wrap it up with, is I want you to ask yourself, like, who is influencing me? Where am I getting my influence? What is the influence that's guiding my decisions? That's like, just start with there. Where is the influence coming from? Who am I allowing? Who's being the influencer of my own life? Start with that, because what you just said, Danielle, made me think about it. There's many people who are going to think we're a batshit crazy just because we're having this discussion. And I, for one, between noticing everyone going down the rabbit hole and then suddenly wanting something else to be the influence, I'm like, holy shit, this is not taking them inside of themselves and to their inner knowing to explore. And at the same time, the rest of the world is saying you're crazy. So here you are. It's kind of like TMS. Like you're learning this thing and you're like, oh my God, holy shit, this is like crazy. And it's made all the changes. And everyone else is like, have no idea. You Looney Tune, go back to the planet you came from. So that's an influence. The person thinking that will shut you down in shame.
Oh yeah, they like our not self. Like, people like us and are not self because it's easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of relationships are not awakened relationships. They're mental. And, you know, I would love to eventually get into relationship stuff because that's really what I like to specialize in too. And like, you know, learning about that. And then you just have this whole other view of like, I'm not attached and I am still going to be myself no matter where I'm at and who I'm with. And that is what's really attractive. You know, that is, imagine two people that are understanding of each other and can empower each other, right?
Because they want to, just because they want to be in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Not because you make me whole or you make me this or you make like, but because they're already two whole beings who get to fully be themselves and explore and experience. That's, yeah. But it's especially 10, 20, 30-year marriages or relationships. Shit, like you change into 5 different people and there's that person holding on to the first part of you. Like that's where a lot of that dissonance, you know, in relationships happens is they are still treating you as the person that you were, not recognizing that you're not that person anymore. And then we still treat them as the person that we met, you know, as we met them, or the thing that serves us that we want to hold on to. And then we go into that judgment and comparison and then we suffer. That's when we suffer.